Alright, today we're going to look at bringing in different models into 3ds Max. If you go to the folder that was provided, you can see there are a series of files here, basically each just named for the corresponding program that runs them. So if I go to my SketchUp file here, as soon as this opens up, you can see it's just a basic building, and I have a couple of views set up. And there are materials applied to this. Now, what's really great about SketchUp is when I go to import this into Max, Max, I believe 2012 and above, will take a SketchUp file directly. So I can just select this SketchUp file, and when I go to import it, it's asking me for what objects I want to bring in with it. If I bring in the cameras, those 3 views that I had set up will actually come in as well. And I kind of want to leave just all this other stuff off because if there's any, maybe there's hidden objects, I'll bring those in as well. They'll stay hidden in Max. I don't want the daylight system, and I don't want to split the objects up by the layer. I'm just gonna kind of import it just as is. If you wanted to, you can turn that on and split it up. And then it's asking me where I want to place my materials. Just for the purposes of this, we'll go to that desktop folder, export it, and I'll just make a new folder just to dump those into. So those are going to my desktop. I click OK. It imports it, and you can see it even has the cameras here. So if I hit C for camera on my keyboard, you can see they're scene 2, which is this view. If I hit C again, here's scene 3. If I hit C again, there's scene 4. Why scene 4 is not? Which one is scene 4? That's 2. This is 4. So it looks like 4 is something weird. 4 was a 2-point perspective that I had set up. So let's see if I can. Yeah, I can at least see the building now. But I mean, if you have a basic model set up in SketchUp, you got to bring it in. You can bring up your views that you've set up before in SketchUp. Have your materials come in, and have your model and geometry in here fairly quickly and easily because it reads the file just directly. So reset Max now. The next file type I want to show you is the AutoCAD file type, just because again Max takes this file directly. So if I go and actually look at this file, you can see I have a series of different geometries here, and if you notice, whatever I have in my color tablet here, so for example this table is ID number 30. If I look at this guy here, this is under color number 190. So kind of whatever my layering system is in here in terms of the color, when I go to bring this into 3ds Max now, I'll do import, I'll grab that CAD file, hit open, and I want to make sure that I'm bringing it in as one object here, and that's basically the only thing that I have checked. Everything else is off. I'm bringing in all the layers, and I'm not really doing anything with my spline, so I bring this guy in. When I bring this guy in, it kind of groups everything together, all attached in one object. But what's great about this is if I come in here and just to kind of show you guys what's going on, I'll create a MSO material. So we'll do a multi-sub object. Keep all of these, and I'm just gonna drag these guys in here randomly. Alright, grab that guy. And we'll grab this orange one. Okay. So if I actually go in here and again, it's the same IDs as what was on my my color IDs in CAD, so if you kind of have all those written down, you can see 190, and if I hit select ID, that's everything on ID 190. So if I came in here and actually changed this to 190, and then came in here and, you know, this one's 30, so I'll change this one to 30, whatever this guy is, 4, and saying I have a duplicate now. This guy is 43, this guy is 6, which is fine, we already have a 6. This guy is 3, which we had, then I took away. This guy is 5, which again I just took away there. So we'll just do that. So just to kind of give you a sense of what's going on here, if I apply this now to my object, whatever ID is associated here in my MSO and associated with that color in AutoCAD gets associated with this 3ds Max model. So when I apply that, those colors, you know, materials are basically applied to my model. So it's a really handy way of kind of importing a CAD model, having it be just this block here essentially in Max, you know, where Max is reading that geometry very efficiently, and you can apply everything with an MSO. So that's the CAD file. And the next file type I'm going to show you is actually Revit, which if you're using Max 2013, the new Max 2013, you can bring in a Revit file directly. Otherwise, you have to come into Revit, and what you're going to do is export an FBX file. So just from a 3D view or some camera view that you have set up, what you can do is you can come in here, and there is an export FBX, which saves as a 3D view, and we'll just put this in our exported folder, hit save, and it might take a minute or two to export depending on your geometry, depending on what you have going on in Revit. You know, if there's a lot going on, obviously it's going to take a lot longer to export, but once that's done, I can come here, do import, we'll go to that file, we'll hit open, and as far as my options are concerned, I do not want smoothing groups on. I want to make sure that's off. All the other stuff, I mean, really you can kind of leave it on by default. I'll bring in my cameras if I have any cameras kind of set up. I don't want lights or global ambient color kind of coming in with it. I mean, like you know, I could leave. I'll leave my units on. I'll leave this stuff on, and I just want to do Revit actually, so that it kind of does. I actually have stuff preset up for Revit, so when I click OK, again, it might take a minute or two to come in. And you can see it brings my model in here kind of as is. Now a nice feature in 2012 here, because you can see if I actually select some of these things, like for example, this is kind of, you know, off, and this is kind of its own piece here as well, even though it's the same material that's applied to, you know, this exterior wall here. I say I didn't want to import that. I'll reset this file. What I can do is I can actually link my file in, and if I go to and I select that file on my desktop, oops, go back, workshop exported, open. I'll bring it in and I'll do combine by Revit materials. So whatever materials I kind of have set up, it's going to combine those things, you know, by the material. And when I go to attach this file, again, it might take a minute or two to attach, and after it kind of goes through creating the objects, it'll go through also a linking process, so that if I go back later, update some things, re-export that FBX, I can then just come in here into my link manager and simply update the file that is now attached. There'll be like a little red flag here, and I can just hit reload and reload that file. But the nice thing about this is if I come into Max now, is that this stuff is now combined by material. So when I go to select that wall, for example, it's now one object based on the material that was assigned to it in Revit. Or if I grab these glass panels, since they're all glass, they're basically all combined into one material. So as I'm going through and applying, if I'm using V-Ray or doing whatever, I'm not using the mental ray materials, I can say, okay, that's my glass material, this is my wall material, and I can kind of quickly reapply the materials as needed to my Revit model without a whole lot of difficulty. Now if I'm need to make changes or do whatever to the geometry, and you're like, well, I have linked geometry in here now, it's not imported into Max, what you can actually do is go back to that link panel and bind the geometry into 3ds Max. So now I can come in here and if I really I wasn't impinged, didn't want to go back into Revit to make whatever kind of edits, and I just wanted to do something like that with the wall. I mean, whatever I needed to do just quickly, I could kind of do that just quickly in Max, and those changes would be kind of only within this program and not within Revit. It's not exactly the best idea to break the link, but if you want to do something quickly and modify the geometry, do whatever with it, and break that link, you still have that option available if you want to do that. Alright, the next file type I'm going to show you guys is through Maya. So if I actually go to Maya here and go to Open Scene, Maya, Open, you can see I just have a series of planes here, nothing really too complicated. And I even have a light and some line work kind of there on top here. Now Autodesk bought Maya. So I mean I used to export as a IGES file out of Maya to get this into 3ds Max, but now I kind of prefer doing it just through FBX. So if I do export all, and we'll just call this Maya exported, export, and I'll hit export again. All the standard settings are fine. And then if I go to 3ds Max and I go to import, and I go to Maya, I should be able to open this guy up, and I want to switch this to just Autodesk Media and Entertainment. This is where all the settings, if you want to bring in your camera and lights and all that kind of stuff. So we'll click OK. And again, it might take a minute or two, but then you can see if I turn off my helpers there and hit G to hide my grid, it basically brings in the file as is from Maya without too much difficulty. And I have my lights there and my shapes there as well. So it's a fairly straightforward process, I think, if you use the FBX exporter and then import it into 3ds Max that way. The last file type I want to show you is actually Rhino. So let me open up my file here, go to Rhino, hit open. Now what I typically like to do, again, you can export as like an IGES or something like that, but I find if you have some fairly complex stuff in Rhino, it just doesn't tend to handle it too well. So the best thing I found is to actually do it as an AutoCAD file. So what I'll do is I'll just call this Rhino, hit save, and what I'm doing is I usually select the R12 natural, and if I come into edit scheme and go to curves, you can see actually I do have some curves in here, and it's telling me, okay, any of your curves, this is your maximum angle here. If I increase that, the curve will be less refined. If I go down to like 2 or 1, it'll be a more refined, more segmented curve. Again, simplifying lines and arcs. If I simplify my tolerance to like 0.1, it's going to be a stronger simplifying of the curve. So I'm just going to kind of leave those alone. I'm going to leave these guys alone as well. I'll just kind of close out of here and click OK. and it's now asking me, how much do I want to mesh this. I could go into my detailed controls, give it very specific numbers on the density, the angle, all that kind of stuff, whether it's refining the mesh or not. I mean, really, you can kind of leave it on the simple controls. Just hit preview to kind of see what's going on. It's fairly dense like that, and if I hit preview, it kind of does a little bit less. Just to kind of show you that you don't have to have something that is super dense like this here. You can actually do it with fewer polygons. I'll export it like this, click OK, come over to 3ds Max. Now the trick is when you go to import this file, you want to make sure that I mean, you could do it as one object if you really wanted to, and again, the same color IDs would kind of be applied to whatever material IDs, but coming out of Rhino, it's a little bit harder to control that because it's kind of built for the AutoCAD way. So if you brought it, I guess if you had the AutoCAD file, open it in AutoCAD, reassigned your layer color values, you can bring it in and have your IDs and just bring it in as one object. When I'm working in Rhino, though, I usually like to do it by my layers, blocks, and node hierarchy. And I'm not welding any of my vertices, and I'm not doing any kind of auto smoothing on the faces. So if I go ahead and click OK, you can see it came in pretty rough and pretty jagged, and there's even looks like some weird kind of artifacts going on here in some of the corners. And some of this can be smoothed out to a certain extent. If I select everything and do smoothing groups to this, but you can see it's still kind of jagged in certain areas. It's not exactly the most refined thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Rhino and just show you that the default really does seem to be kind of the best way to go. If you have some curved stuff, if you have very simple stuff, you can really crank that stuff down. So I'm just going to save over this file, click OK here, and I'm just going to bring this back up to the middle. Click preview to kind of see what's going on. Click OK. Go back to 3ds Max. Go to import. Grab that same file that I've saved over top of, and now you can see when this comes in, it's a lot more refined, a lot better. And when I do the smoothing groups to it, it's looking much better, even though that geometry is not exactly the most refined. It's still looking quite a bit better than it was before. And when I render it out, there's no really artifacts, whereas if I come in here and turn off my smoothing groups, clear those out, and I go to render this, you're going to see there's obviously some pretty heavy artifacts in here with the geometry. So you can kind of get rid of some of that stuff if you're working with some pretty curved stuff coming out of Rhino into 3ds Max just by using smoothing groups. I wouldn't really recommend doing like a mesh smooth on top of this, because based on how your geometry is, it might do some really wonky stuff to it, as you can see here as soon as I drop that on. So I mean, smoothing groups is really going to be the best way to control that if you want to keep your polygon count down to something reasonable. This is only 3,000 polys here. So that's really it. That's all the softwares here: CAD, Maya, Revit, Rhino, and SketchUp. So 3ds Max kind of can handle any geometry you throw at it, and it's pretty versatile in terms of getting your stuff into the program.